Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So I wanted to start posting more frequently to talk about Oscars and movies. So today I'm going to be sharing my 5 favorite underrated films that have come out this year, the year 2022. And later, we're going to talk TIFF, we're going to talk Venice, we're going to talk Oscars, all that fun stuff. But before TIFF rolls around and starts shaping the award season race with all these new shiny toys and washes away all the movies that have come out this year already, I think now would be the perfect time to actually talk about those movies that I think deserves a little bit more love and appreciation. Now, as I start sharing these, you might start to wonder, where's Everything Everywhere All at Once? Where's Top Gun Maverick? Well, those films have definitely found an audience and are likely to stay in the conversation throughout the year. So again, these were ones that I felt weren't as widely appreciated, in my opinion, even if they were critically acclaimed, but for whatever reason just didn't seem to find that audience that I felt it deserved. So again, I'm going to be talking Oscars and awards in the second half of the video, but without further ado, let's get into it. All right, number 5, I'm going with Navalny. This one is available right now on HBO Max. For those who don't know, this is a documentary and it's crazy. It's about this guy named Alexei Navalny. He's this anti-corruption activist in Russia who's running against current President Vladimir Putin until suddenly he gets mysteriously poisoned. So this documentary is kind of an investigative search to prove the Russian ruling party, including Putin himself, was behind this attempted assassination. And I'll just say, revelations are made that will literally make your jaw drop. What I love about the movie, even in the opening scene, Navalny makes it clear that they don't want to make some boring puff piece. Instead, they want to give the people something more thrilling, and it totally delivers. The film is also a great example of showing, not telling. Navalny doesn't just tell you how corrupt Putin is, but it's able to show you. And in the end, it's just a really great investigative documentary, and I hope it stays in the conversation and, seriously contends for Best Documentary come next Oscars. Okay, number 4. Let's go with a rom-com. I think, personally, the rom-com genre is often very underappreciated, and I think, the good ones are made far and few between. So when a good one comes out, it should be celebrated. So my number 4 underappreciated movie is Fire Island. Now, this one wasn't originally on my radar, but I saw it pop up on Hulu, and watching it was like one of those, those joyful experiences of just finding a hidden treasure. It's witty and it's fun. It's a modern take on Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice about a group of queer best friends who go to their annual trip to Fire Island. Not only is it fresh in its reinterpretation of the original material, but also it's just fresh in the sense that it's entirely an all-queer cast, which helped give the movie, an authentic and specific feel and voice that, Hollywood movies just really struggle to capture. All in all, it was just a really breezy, funny, great, perfect comfort movie that you could probably watch multiple times. Check it out, Fire Island on Hulu. All right, number 3. This one was released earlier in the year and no one seemed to really notice, and I think it's been criminally underappreciated, and it's The Outfit. Written and directed by Graham Moore, who was the writer of Imitation Game, this is practically a one-location thriller that takes place in a small tailoring shop, which also doubles up as this kind of drop/hub spot for local gangsters. The owner of the shop is a tailor. Well, more specifically, he's a cutter, played by Mark Rylance, and he has to continually outsmart a group of gangsters in order to survive the night. And I think Rylance gives one of the best performances I've seen so far this year. His intentions are never quite clear. He keeps you on your toes, and his character is, he's always keeping his cards close to his chest. And as an audience, we're constantly studying him closely to try to get some read on him. And the film itself is one that offers a lot of twists and turns that, personally I felt were pretty unexpected and genuinely surprising. Also, the film takes place pretty much over the course of the evening. And in many ways, it's something that you honestly could have just plopped on stage and it would have worked just as well. The outfit also reminded me of the type of like film Alfred Hitchcock would have made. There's actually a widely known theory that Hitchcock would talk about as an example of how he would create suspense in film, which he called the bomb under the table theory. And I think director Graham Moore uses that method a few times in the outfit, and it just works so well. Now, there is one twist towards the end of the film that I don't quite buy into, but, you know, I say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's still so much good stuff in there to enjoy. So check it out. The outfit, super underrated. All right, number 2. Now, this one is one I know everyone has probably heard of, and I'm sure some of you have already seen, but this movie came and left the theater quicker than you can say, I Will Avenge You, Father. And since it didn't perform well at the box office, I'm putting it on the list anyways. It's Robert Eggers' The Northman. I can't tell you how pumped and invested I was watching this revenge story that honestly played out like the best episode of Game of Thrones you've ever seen. The story is relatively simple, and for Eggers, you know, really straightforward. The Northman is about a Viking who's on a mission to kill his uncle, save his mother, and avenge his father. It's bloody, it's muddy, it's undeniably brutal and barbaric, but I mean, what can I say? I had a blast. It was, you know, super epic in scope. I just felt like fully immersed in the Viking world that Eggers created, and the score also just like was pulsating, and I was in my chair just like pulsating with it, and the performances across the board were just like top notch. I'm sure it's not for everyone, but if you like revenge tales or movies like, you know, like Apocalypto and haven't seen The Northman, give it a shot. And finally, that brings us to our number 1 most underrated movie, and I think it deserves a little bit more love, is Richard Linklater's little gem, Apollo 10.5. Now, if you haven't seen this movie and been avoiding it, I'm going to guess the reason why is because of what you think the movie's based on. You know, the trailer does make it look like it's about a kid who gets enlisted by NASA to go to the moon, but that's not really necessarily what it's about. 10.5 is more of kind of a scrapbook of all these specific memories set in 1960s Houston, inspired by Linklater's own childhood. It's actually pretty similar to Boyhood, and I think Linklater has a fascination with memories, and not just the life, milestone memories, but the often simple and random memories that for whatever reason just takes up space in your mind. I mean, we all have those random memories from childhood, whether it's a scam that you and your friends used to pull or like something funny that your mom used to say. To me, Apollo 10.5 is just the ultimate comfort movie too. Like when you watch it, you just get that warm and toasty feeling, kind of like when you used to watch The Sandlot. It just gives you that warm, nostalgic feeling. Also, the animation is really neat and involves that process of rotoscoping that Linklater used in his previous films. And I think it just really helps blend real memories and fantasy together in a way that just felt very seamless. It may not be for everyone, but do yourself a favor. It's on Netflix. So if you're on the fence, watch like the first 15 minutes at least, then that will give you a good idea of whether it's for you or not. For me, I think it's like a Linklater must see. All right, and that's it. That's my picks for the most underappreciated movies from 2022 and movies I'd like to see people come back to throughout the year. But hey, I mean, I'm just a dude in my living room. I don't consider myself a critic by any means. So you let me know, what movies do you think have been underrated? Comment below. And it should go without saying, Everything Everywhere All at Once. That is like, to me, pretty much the movie to see this year. I would consider it underrated, as I'm sure it will be a movie that people will continue to talk about throughout the entire award season. But if you haven't seen it yet, that's an absolute must. Top Gun Maverick, again, needs no help from me. It, killed it at the box office, but it is undeniably fun. Okay, some honorable mentions for other films that I thought were underrated. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. I feel like it did relatively well at the box office. And it definitely did well critically, but I still feel like not enough people saw it. So I'd probably put that one on the list. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's really beautiful. Hoping that wins animated feature. Another one, Good Luck to You, Leo Gran. That's on Amazon Prime, I believe. That's practically another one location dialogue driven movie between a retired teacher and a young sex worker in a hotel room. It's super well written, it's well acted, it explores really taboo topics in a way that's sweet and tender. And one honorable mention, it's a bit unknown on how people are responding to this movie because it did just come out, but I really do think 3,000 Years of Longing is definitely worth checking out. It didn't perform well at the box, and I think that's a bit of a shame because there's just so much good stuff in it. It's not perfect by any means, but there seems to be this ongoing debate also about the use of flashbacks in the movie, and I put flashbacks in quotes because to me it just feels more like an epic story being told within a larger story. And in my opinion, it completely worked for me, but it didn't seem to completely work for everyone. So I don't know. Check it out for yourself and let me know your thoughts. And you know what? Let's also throw in The Sea Beast in that pot as well. It's a Netflix animation that's pretty good. It's slightly more mature than your average animated film, and I think it gives Disney a run for its money. So hopefully that will be in the best animated feature conversation as well. And speaking of Oscars, let's talk Oscars. It was a big couple of weeks for award season, guys. Some of the award season, presumed front runners have already screened. We just had the Venice International Film Festival. We had Telluride, and now we have TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, starting on September 8th until the 18th. So this award season is just zooming. So when TIFF wraps, I'm going to be doing a full breakdown of all the film festivals and the current state of the Oscar race, and I'm going to be giving my update on my Oscar predictions. All right, but let's talk about the current state of what we do know right now. And I'm going to be talking a little bit of a warning. I'm going to be talking bluntly because I really don't want to beat around the bush, but some of the potential Best Picture movies that have premiered, honestly, quite frankly, may have already sealed their fates. So I'm talking about Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu's Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths, premiered at the Venice Film Festival, and the reviews were not looking incredibly optimistic. I mean, look at we're talking about a 51 on Metacritic, 57 on Rotten Tomatoes. And by the way, I'm seeing the film being called Bardo, and one that described the 3-hour movie feeling like it was 17 hours long. I'm seeing words like overly pretentious being flung around. So this is pretty unfortunate. And by the way, just a side note, like I'm kind of a weird person. So when a movie gets rave reception, I want to see that movie. But when a movie gets panned too, like I want to see that movie. Like, so for me, I just always want to see the movie and just kind of decide for myself. But that being said, I think you can definitely take Bardo off the table for Best Picture, for a nomination even, unfortunately, which is pretty incredible when you think about it, because when I made my early predictions, I didn't put Bardo in my top 10 because I didn't feel like the premise was incredibly like digestible enough for the Oscar voters. But it's pretty wild to think though, because like Iñárritu is a recent 2-time Best Director winner. So it's just kind of unfortunate that Iñárritu missed on this one, and so did Netflix. So it is what it is. But 13 Lives, let's talk about that really briefly. That dropped on Amazon Prime. The reviews were actually not terrible. It had an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes, I believe. Yeah, and a 66 on Meta. By the way, I'm going to be mentioning Rotten Tomato scores and Metacritic scores quite a bit because, you know, critical success isn't like the end all be all, but it definitely does play a factor in securing an Oscar nomination. You know, Bohemian Rhapsody did get a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, for example, and it earned a Best Picture nomination. So it's not everything, but to win a Best Picture, those movies typically have to have a decent score. Just to give some context, here's all the Best Picture winners from the past 15 years and their Rotten Tomatoes score and Metacritic score. So you can see, a recent winner like Green Book still managed to win with only 77%. All others, since the artist, landed in the 90% range. So even though 13 Lives technically, did decent with critics, there's definitely doesn't feel like there's a massive passion for it. They didn't do the festival run. So it's probably likely to kind of sizzle and fade away. So I think it's likely to say that that's going to be off the table for a Best Picture nomination. But premiered at Telluride, Women Talking. And again, Always worth mentioning about Telluride, 10 out of the last 13 Best Picture winners screened at Telluride. More recently, though, with Coda and Green Book, that won Best Picture, and that did not go to Telluride. So there has been some recent exceptions to that little stat there. The reception for Women Talking has been pretty darn excellent. I think at the time of recording this, we have 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and 90% on Metacritic. Based on some of the reactions I'm seeing, there's also seems to be an array of performances to choose from and potentially nominate. We got Rooney Mara, Jessie Buckley, Claire Foy, Ben Whishaw. I heard it's very ensemble-y. So, they might have trouble on trying to decide kind of who goes lead and who goes supporting. But Sarah Polley is definitely on the table to get nominated for Best Director. And I heard Best Adapted Screenplay is looking really good. So we could see Sarah Polley be the third consecutive female director to win Best Director. And by the way, the video I made in March, my early Oscar predictions for the film to win Best Picture was Women Talking. So we'll have to see how that turns out. But that's looking pretty good right now, I would say. Especially because there's a good correlation between Best Picture and Screenplay. So we'll have to see how that pans out. Okay, Empire of Light was another film that premiered at Telluride. And originally, when I was seeing the reactions come out, originally it felt like it came out of the gate pretty strong, but really quickly, especially looking at Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes, the score feels really relatively soft right now. So we'll have to kind of wait and see with this one, see if it continues to grow upward or if it just continues to stay kind of in that lukewarm area. But, I can see this still being like a really, big hit with maybe like certain members of the Academy, like the Steak Eater group. But, it's not looking good. Definitely not looking good to win Best Picture. But a Best Picture nomination, I think it's possible. Olivia Colman is getting some really good feedback from the film, so her being nominated an actress feels more likely from what I heard. Also, Roger Deakins for cinematography and Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross for their score. I think I've seen some good mentions for them, so that's possible to see them in those categories. Another movie that premiered at Venice was Darren Aronofsky's The Whale. Now, I've interpreted the response for The Whale as being relatively soft. However, the reception for Brendan Fraser has been incredibly strong. The fans online have been calling for a renaissance for some time, and the industry seems to have embraced this as well. I would say Brendan looks really, 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 really strong right now in the Best Actor category, certainly for a nomination. But Picture is perhaps a different story. Just thinking about like Mickey Rourke when he had his comeback moment with Aronofsky's The Wrestler. That film was pretty critically acclaimed. It had like a 98%, I want to say, on Rotten Tomatoes. So I'm not sure about Picture, but let's just hope and pray that this doesn't kind of affect Brendan, his chances of getting Best Actor. I think you never know. This could turn out to be just kind of like an Adam Sandler Uncut Gems scenario. But the industry love feels real, and the Academy does like a comeback story. So, I think if the reviews continue to lean in the positive era, I think it will work out for him. I mean, if Rami Malek could win Best Actor for a film that got 60%, I think Fraser can certainly win as well. So, one thing also that I would always hear Tom O'Neill from Gold Derby say, and something that I always agreed with, which is that oftentimes the winners are the people that the industry want to give a hug to. And honestly, like who doesn't want to hug Fraser? Like, really? And we had also Noah Baumbach's film, White Noise, that premiered at Venice as well. I would say White Noise, if I'm looking at it right now, yeah, I would say the reception for White Noise has been pretty soft. Like, it's got a 68 on Meta, an 84 on Rotten. And looking closer at the reviews, no one seemed to actively hate the film, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of people who seem to really have a lot of passion for the film either. It kind of lays in the middle. When it premiered at Venice, it was reported getting a whopping 152nd ovation. And when Dune screened at Venice, just for comparison, I believe it got an 8-minute standing ovation. Again, it's not like the end-all be-all, just giving some context. So I don't know. It kind of feels like this movie is currently on the outskirts of that 10 lineup, but my instinct is based on the concept and lack of passion. I don't imagine White Noise is going to crack the Best Picture lineup. Speaking of Venice, standing ovations, Bones and All received an 8.5-minute standing ovation, and the reviews for that were pretty solid. We're talking about an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes score, 74 on Meta. To me, this might be more of a critics movie. The subject matter involves cannibalism, but also seems to be a very romantic film. So I'm not sure if that's like the Academy's cup of tea. I mean, they did award Silence of the Lambs, so you never know. But it's a bit of a mystery on how the Academy will respond to this. My instinct is like, I don't know if this is an Academy film. But so I would put that right now for me on the outside of the Best Picture lineup for now. I think it maybe stands a better chance in the kind of supporting category with Rylance or Timothée Chalamet or Taylor Russell in lead. So we'll see on that one. But the movie, guys, the movie that shot near the top of the pile was Todd Field's Tar. You know, Todd hasn't made a movie since 2006, since Little Children, but he's back and he's stronger than ever. We're talking a current 92 on Meta, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. This one was for me the biggest surprise. I didn't even have it, I don't think, in my top 10. I'm seeing those big buzzwords flying around, words like masterclass, triumphant, magnificent, you know, words like that. And the main takeaway, though, is Cate Blanchett. Cate Blanchett just took a battering ram and just smashed open the Best Actress race. This could pretty much be her third Oscar. I would even say like she's favorited right now for sure to win. That being said, we do have to be weary a little bit about critics' darling movies. Another Cate Blanchett movie that you might remember called Carol, that was a critics' darling as well, and it did miss a nomination for Best Picture on Oscar morning. However, the current state for Tar for getting a Best Picture nomination is, from right now, looking very strong. And even more so for Cate Blanchett, and even for Todd Field for screenplay, and even potentially director. I mean, it's looking very strong in a lot of major categories, and that movie has me super intrigued. So I'm looking forward to seeing that one. Another film that performed quite well was Martin McDonagh's The Banshees of the Inisherin, currently standing at a 90% on Meta and 100%, I want to say. Let me just double check. Yes, 90 on Meta and 100 on Rotten Tomatoes at the time of recording. And by the way, I should just quickly mention that these scores are obviously going to fluctuate once more people see them. I'm just giving you a report of the current scores out of these major film festivals. But this one, people seem to be, you know, really enjoying. You never know. This could be another repeat of Three Billboards. That was a strong competitor a few years ago. Colin Farrell is having a bit of a moment right now, and I believe it was reported that he got like a 13-minute standing ovation at Venice, which, by the way, I mean, I don't take a lot of stock into standing ovations. You know, Colin Farrell's enthusiastic mom could have been the one who kept that standing ovation going, for all I know. I don't know. That being said, I'm seeing that both Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson are both very viable potential options to be nominated, as well as actress Carrie Condon in the supporting category. So this could be a big actor player for sure. And the rest of the other categories like cinematography and sound, I'm sure that's going to kind of depend on how well the film continues to perform. And lastly, we have Don't Worry, Darling. Now, I'm going to avoid talking about the ongoing gossip surrounding the film, kind of like how Olivia Wilde dodged a few questions at that Venice press conference. I did see a few good mentions on directing and cinematography. However, I do see most of the praise going to Florence Pugh. Overall, the response for the film hasn't been too hot. The film, I think, received right now, it's a 48 on Meta and a 41 on Rotten Tomatoes. So unfortunately, this might be more of a MTV Best Movie Award play for Don't Worry, Darling. Doesn't seem to be a serious contender right now for Oscars. I am curious how much the bad press has affected kind of the reception it's received, but a Best Picture nomination, it's not looking likely. Yeah, not looking good. But other than that, there's probably a lot more movies to talk about. We're in the middle of the busy festival week right now, so we'll have more movies rolling out soon. But for now, here's a reminder of the current critical scores of the Best Picture hopefuls that I just kind of covered. Again, I think the big standouts in terms of broad support was Tar and Women Talking and the Banshees of the Inisherin. Now, one thing to remember is I wouldn't count out films for a Best Picture nomination just because their score isn't stellar. You know, we do have to remember films like Don't Look Up got a 56% on Rotten Tomatoes, certified rotten, and it still snagged a nomination in picture. So, you know, I'm not counting out films like Empire of the Light right now. I have a feeling that could play very well with a large chunk of Academy voters. So we still have a way to go. Also, like, to be completely honest, like, I don't love talking about Rotten Tomato scores and Metacritic scores, especially this early. You know, part of me is always like crushed to see a film work so hard and almost like immediately, you know, get disregarded before an audience really has had a chance to see it. But it's like they say, you know, first impressions are everything, and it's just so tough to ignore how that first wave of critical response really does help set the stage and just set forth a trajectory for a lot of these films for the rest of the season. And just to show you an example, you know, of about reviews and critical praise and how it affects the Oscars, I was curious. I took a look back at all the Best Picture nominees since The King's Speech in 2010. And fun fact, out of the last 106 Best Picture nominees, do you know how many of those films were rated as being rotten? Which is under a 60% score or less. How many of those films were rotten? 2. Yes, just 2 films out of the last 106 were voted as being rotten, and that was Don't Look Up with 56% and Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close with 45. In fact, only 7 out of the last 106 Best Picture nominees got less than a 75%. So we're talking about 93% of the Best Picture nominees since 2010 had at least a 75% or higher. So does a film need great reviews to be nominated for Best Picture? No. But it certainly helps. And typically, there's only one spot, if any, in any Best Picture lineup that really allows lukewarm reviews, which is why films like The Whale and Empire of the Light does give me some pause for Best Picture consideration. You should definitely slow down, I would say, on films that are not doing well critically, because statistically, they have a harder chance getting in that lineup. So anyways, these are just the first batch of films to roll in. We have TIFF starting up this week. So we're going to have, what are we going to have at TIFF? We're going to have Florian Zeller's The Sun. We're going to have Spielberg's Fabelmans, The Women King, The Greatest Beer Run, Apple's Greatest Beer Run, Decision to Leave, and much, much more. So as soon as TIFF wraps, we're going to be doing a full festival breakdown. I'm going to give my official update on all my Oscar predictions, and I'm going to provide some key stats pertaining to festival and Oscar correlation. All right, for this week, that's all I got for you. Let me know in the comment section below what movie you're most looking forward to seeing. Also, what your favorite underrated movie was this year. I'll be sure to check it out. Connect with me on Letterboxd or Twitter. I just joined like a couple months ago. And of course, if you like this video and haven't already subscribed, feel free to do so. That way I can bring you even more videos. I love you all so much. Thank you for watching. And until next time, I will see you at the Oscars. Rest in peace, Bardo. Rest in peace.